In the end, true connection is not a stroke of luck or a twist of fate. It is the result of deliberate intention. When we stop waiting for relationships to just happen and instead begin to build them with purpose, presence, and consistency, we experience something far more powerful than temporary attraction. We discover a depth of bond that is forged through honesty, nurtured through care, and sustained by mutual growth. So if we truly desire lasting connection, we must be willing to show up fully, choose each other daily, and lead with intention, not accident. Because love that is built with intention is the kind that doesn't just survive, it transforms. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever asked yourself why the people you love the most are often the ones who hurt you? The deepest? Why the same patterns seem to repeat? Different faces, same pain. You think you found the one only to discover you were chasing a dream built on illusion. What if I told you it's not just bad luck? What if the real reason you keep falling for the wrong person lies deeper within your wounds, your beliefs, your definition of love itself? Tonight we're going to uncover the hidden script playing in the background of your heart. This is not just a speech, it's a mirror, a key, a turning point. Because the journey from strangers to soulmates isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about breaking the cycle that keeps pulling you toward the wrong one. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Let's begin. When we carry unhealed wounds within us, wounds from childhood, past relationships, betrayal, rejection, or neglect, they don't just sit quietly in the background. They whisper, shape, and sometimes scream their way into how we see the world and how we choose who we connect with. Many people believe they're choosing freely when they fall for someone, but often it's not true choice, it's a subconscious repetition. We are drawn not to what is good for us, but to what is familiar. And familiarity, even when it's painful, feels safer than the unknown. If you grew up feeling ignored, you might chase someone emotionally unavailable. If you were constantly criticized, you may be attracted to someone who makes you feel like you're never enough. These wounds attract relationships that mirror the very pain we haven't healed from. Because we enjoy the suffering, but because the mind tries to recreate the original story, hoping this time it ends differently. This is why so many stay stuck in cycles of toxic love, always asking why it keeps happening, why it always ends the same. The truth is, the relationship you're in often reflects the relationship you have with yourself. If there's self-abandonment inside, you'll tolerate being abandoned by others. If there's deep shame buried under your surface, you may seek people who confirm that you're not worthy of love, because that feels consistent with what you believe, even if it's painful. Until those inner wounds are faced, felt, and healed, they will continue to pull you like a magnet towards situations that echo your past. The pain becomes a pattern, not because you deserve it, but because it has not yet been transformed. Healing doesn't happen through someone else fixing you. It begins when you pause and look honestly at your emotional history. Where did the pain begin? What stories have you told yourself about love and worthiness? Who taught you what love is, and were they right? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones. When you heal the wound, your standard changes. You stop being impressed by intensity and start craving consistency. You stop chasing love that hurts and start choosing love that heals. You begin to recognize red flags, not as challenges to overcome, but as invitations to protect your peace. Suddenly the people who once felt magnetic now seem unsafe. And those who are gentle, steady, and honest, who once seemed boring, begin to feel like home. Healing rewires your attraction. You no longer mistake emotional chaos for chemistry. You begin to see that healthy love may be quieter, but it is rooted, grounded, and enduring. The work is internal, but the reward is external too. Better choices, deeper connections, and finally relationships that reflect the love you've cultivated within. This is not just about who you fall for, it's about who you are when you love. And when who you are is whole, you'll no longer chase after pain and call it passion. You'll choose peace, and it will feel like love. Chemistry can be electric. It's that magnetic pull That spark you feel when you lock eyes with someone or when a conversation flows effortlessly and you lose track of time. It feels exciting, intense, and often overwhelming. But for many, that excitement is mistaken for something deeper. The thrill is interpreted as a sign that this person must be the one. However, chemistry alone is not a reliable indicator of long-term compatibility. What many don't realize is that chemistry is often rooted in the unconscious, the parts of us that are still healing, still longing, or still repeating familiar emotional patterns. It can be triggered by dysfunction as much as by alignment. In fact, many people feel the most chemistry with those who awaken old emotional wounds, not necessarily with those who are emotionally safe or healthy for them. When we confuse chemistry with compatibility, we overlook critical differences in values, lifestyle, communication, and emotional maturity. We end up falling for people who might be emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or even toxic simply because the intensity feels real. And it is real, but it isn't always right. That flutter in your stomach or that longing you can't explain may not be a sign from the universe. Sometimes it's a signal from your nervous system recalling something from your past that felt unresolved. The chaos becomes addictive, and that addiction to emotional highs and lows makes peace feel boring and stability feel lifeless. But relationships built solely on chemistry often burn hot and fast and then collapse. Compatibility, on the other hand, is built. It is not always instant or explosive. It grows through shared values, aligned life goals, mutual respect, emotional safety, and consistent communication. It doesn't demand perfection, but it does require two people committed to understanding and supporting each other beyond attraction. The problem is that compatibility often lacks the drama many have been conditioned to expect in love. Because we are so used to associating love with struggle, we question a connection that feels easy or steady. We mistake familiarity for fate and volatility for passion. This confusion keeps people stuck in repeated cycles, moving from one intense but unstable relationship to another, wondering why love always ends in heartbreak. The truth is, compatibility doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it looks like calm. It looks like being seen and heard. It looks like not needing to prove your worth every day just to be loved. It's the kind of connection that stands when life gets hard, when emotions fluctuate, and when attraction inevitably shifts with time. To build a lasting relationship, you must learn to differentiate between a rush and a root. One will lift you briefly, the other will hold you through storms. Learning to appreciate compatibility over chemistry requires maturity, self-awareness, and often healing. When you understand your patterns and learn what true emotional connection feels like, you'll stop chasing sparks and start recognizing substance. And that's when real love begins, not with fireworks, but with fire that sustains. When someone carries low self-worth, their perception of love and relationships becomes distorted. They don't just lower their standards, they begin to believe they don't deserve to have any at all. At the core of many broken relationships is a person who accepted far less than they needed, not because it felt good, but because it felt normal. When you don't see your own value, it's almost impossible to expect someone else to love, then becomes something to earn rather than something to receive. You start trying to prove you're worthy of being chosen, sacrificing your needs, tolerating disrespect, and staying silent in situations that scream for boundaries. What should be a mutual connection turns into a desperate performance. People with low self-worth often interpret red flags as challenges to overcome. They confuse pain with passion and chase after people who are emotionally unavailable or inconsistent because deep down they feel that love must be fought for. They stay in toxic situations because they believe that if they just try harder, there'll be enough. This belief doesn't just lead to disappointment, It creates emotional exhaustion. Love becomes a battlefield where worth is constantly questioned and peace is rarely found. The tragedy is that people stuck in this cycle often don't recognize it. They think they're being loyal, forgiving, or understanding, when in reality they're abandoning themselves. They excuse poor behavior with justifications like everyone has flaws, or maybe I expect too much, when the real issue is that they don't believe they have the right to expect anything at all. They begin to normalize being mistreated because deep inside they don't feel worthy of healthy love. This pattern isn't just painful, it's dangerous. It teaches people to stay small, to be quiet, to put others on a pedestal while shrinking themselves in the process. True standards in a relationship aren't about being demanding. They're about being aligned with your worth. When you know who you are and what you bring to the table, you stop accepting half love. You stop making excuses for people who can't meet you where you are. You realize that love isn't meant to deplete you. It's meant to support you, strengthen you, and grow you. But that kind of love starts with how you love yourself. Healing low self-worth means rewriting the story you've told yourself about what you deserve. It means looking back at where those beliefs began, whether from childhood, past relationships, or cultural conditioning, and deciding to break the pattern. This process isn't easy. It takes courage to raise your standards when you've been taught to settle. It takes strength to walk away from people you care about when they can't meet your emotional needs. But every time you choose yourself, you build your worth. Every time you say no to less, you say yes to more. And slowly, you begin to attract relationships that reflect the love you've given yourself. Not ones based on fear, desperation, or scarcity, but ones rooted in mutual respect, safety, and truth. Because when you finally see your own worth, everything changes. Not just who you love, but how you love. When someone lacks clarity on their identity and purpose, it affects every area of their life, especially relationships. Without a strong understanding of who they are, they often look to others for validation, direction, and a sense of worth. This makes them vulnerable to losing themselves in relationships, adapting to fit the expectations of others, and molding their personality to avoid rejection or abandonment. They become shapeshifters in love, not because they're dishonest, but because they're unsure of who they are without someone else defining them. The fear of being alone feels worse than the discomfort of being unseen. So they settle, they confuse attachment with connection and routine with purpose. Their relationships become a mirror, not of who they are, but of who they think they should be to feel loved or accepted. This lack of self-clarity often leads to chasing people, places, and situations that don't align with their true values or future. When a person doesn't know what their purpose is, they attach themselves to others who seem to have one. Instead of building a shared future, they become passengers in someone else's journey. They make decisions out of desperation, not visions settling in jobs, friendships, or romantic partnerships that are for temporary comfort. But long-term emptiness, they say yes when they want to say no, stay when they want to leave, and suppress their truth just to maintain peace. Over time, this builds quiet resentment and internal conflict because the life they're living isn't truly theirs. When identity isn't established, boundaries become blurry. You don't know what to protect if you don't know what you value. And when purpose isn't clear, even small challenges feel overwhelming because there's no deeper why anchoring your choices. You begin to rely on others to give you direction, meaning, and emotional safety. The problem is no one else can provide what you haven't discovered within. This often leads to codependency, emotional burnout, and cycles of people-pleasing where love is traded for approval. A person without clarity of purpose may also jump from relationship to relationship, hoping that someone will give them a sense of identity. They believe if they can just find the one, then everything else will make sense. But no person, no matter how loving or loyal, can define your identity or reveal your purpose. That's an internal journey. When that work isn't done, even good relationships can feel confusing or unsatisfying because you're expecting another person to give you what only self-awareness and alignment can offer. On the flip side, when someone gains clarity on who they are and why they're here, their relationships shift. They stop settling for surface-level connections and start seeking partnerships that align with their values, goals, and growth. They become magnetic, not because they're trying to be, but because authenticity always attracts clarity, brings confidence, not arrogance, but the kind of quiet assurance that comes from inner alignment. And when you know who you are, you stop losing yourself in others. Instead, you bring your whole self to the table. And that creates relationships that are not just emotionally fulfilling, but purpose-driven. True connection is never accidental. It is born out of intention. It doesn't just happen because two people meet or feel attracted to one another. It's a deliberate process of showing up, being present, and choosing each other beyond the initial spark. When many people wait for love to find them, for chemistry to turn into commitment, for passion to magically evolve into partnership. But real connection doesn't grow in the soil of assumption or passivity. It grows when both individuals water it with consistent effort, vulnerability, and emotional availability. Intention means being clear about what you want, honest about what you feel, and courageous enough to express it. It's choosing to understand instead of assuming, to listen instead of judge, and to nurture instead of neglect. Without intention, even the strongest initial attraction fades into confusion, unmet expectations, and emotional distance. Most relationships fail not because love wasn't present, but because intention was missing. People expect connection to thrive on autopilot, forgetting that meaningful relationships require energy and focus. They expect the other person to just know how they feel or just get what they need without ever communicating it. But deep connection is not about guessing. It's about clarity. It's not about performing. It's about being real. When two people are intentional about building trust, understanding each other's wounds, and growing together, they create a foundation that goes beyond attraction or compatibility. They build something sacred, a bond that can withstand challenges because it wasn't based on accident, but on choice. Intentional connection also means being present. In a world full of distractions, presence is rare and powerful. It means putting down your phone when someone is speaking, asking deeper questions, noticing the small shifts in mood or tone, and caring enough to respond with empathy. Presence is love in action. It tells the other person, I see you, I value you. You matter here. Without presence, people feel invisible even when they're physically close. The space between two people may be small, but emotionally it feels miles apart. True connection requires us to slow down, tune in, and genuinely engage with one another. Another layer of intention involves consistency. Grand gestures are beautiful, but it's the daily moments of care, support, and emotional honesty that truly build connection. Checking in after a tough day, remembering small details, showing up when it's inconvenient, these are all signs of intentional love. When people stop being intentional, love becomes routine and connection begins to erode. You don't drift apart all at once. It happens gradually when effort fades, when attention turns elsewhere, when assumptions replace communication. True connection is also about being intentional with healing. Every relationship brings up old wounds, insecurities, and fears. But when both individuals are committed to growing and supporting one another through that process, the connection deepens. They don't run when it gets uncomfortable. They lean in. They don't use conflict to break each other down. They use it to build greater understanding. That kind of connection doesn't just survive, it thrives. It becomes a place of restoration, safety, and transformation. Because when two people decide day after day to show up on purpose, love is no longer left to chance. It becomes something powerful, unshakable, and deeply fulfilling. In the end, true connection is not a stroke of luck or a twist of fate. It is the result of deliberate intention. When we stop waiting for relationships to just happen and instead begin to build them with purpose, presence, and consistency, we experience something far more powerful than temporary attraction. We discover a depth of bond that is forged through honesty, nurtured through care, and sustained by mutual growth. So if we truly desire lasting connection, we must be willing to show up fully, choose each other daily, and lead with intention, not accident. Because love that is built with intention is the kind that doesn't just survive, it transforms. Thank you.